Okay, so we want to talk about controlling a motor. This could be uh, like a treadmill, it could be a pump for a washing machine, or a furnace, or a fan, or all sorts of stuff are done with motors. So we want to talk about controlling a motor with a simple device like a microcontroller, like an Arduino. So let's go and look at motors really quick. So here is a motor, and so then this is a DC motor, a 1 horsepower motor. And in order to model it, you see that it has a voltage of 90 volts. And we are just going to initial startup. It's modeled as a 0.537 ohm resistor. So we're doing this motor. So here is our motor. And this is a DC motor, so it's going to have 2 wires coming out. So we're going to give it a power supply. This is a 90-volt motor, so we don't want to go above 90 volts. And then we want to be able to control the motor. So we have to be able to control the motor like that. So we're going to model this. So at initial startup, we have 90 volts, and this gets modeled as a 0.537 ohm resistor. Now, if I just connect my 90-volt supply to that, then we end up getting, a current of like 168 amps. Well, that seems like an awful lot of current. Let's go look at our motor. And you see it has an operating current of about 10 amps. So we don't want 167 amps going through. That's going to be too much. So we only want, let's say, 10 amps. So I have to come in here, right? And I want to create like a current source to control the motor, right? Or not really a current source. We just want some device here that controls my current flow so that I don't have 168 amps. I want this to be 10 amps. In order to do that to be 10 amps, I want to control the voltage across there. So what we're going to use is we're going to use a MOSFET. So for a MOSFET, it has, as long as it's inactive, it has this equation here. So what we see here is that we can control the current by controlling the voltage. So it's basically a voltage controlled current source. And so I can put that into the middle and actually control the current. So we come back over here and let's delete some of this. And we're going to come in here and we're going to put a MOSFET. And we're going to apply a control voltage to get it to work so that I can control the current, and I'm trying to get it so that this is equal to 10 amps. Okay. So, but what we see here is, and we want to be able to turn the motor on and turn the motor off. Okay. And so what we want to do is we have to look at this and see, well, when this motor goes off, so we want to be able to turn the motor off. And if that's, then this is my motor. If it's in cutoff, my transistor's in cutoff, it looks like this. Well, that means that we need at least 90 volts across here, right? So we're going to put 90 volts across my transistor when the motor is off, and then it's going to adjust its voltage to get it to work out. So we have to go and grab ourselves a MOSFET to do this, okay? So here is our first little circuit right here. If I kind of run this, you see here's my 167 amps. That isn't exactly what we want, so we want a lot lower current. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our motor, and we're going to put it in line with a transistor. So we're going to grab this N-type MOSFET right here, and we'll put ground down here. And then we're going to control it with a voltage. Okay. So first of all, when we're grabbing a MOSFET, you see that they give you this VDS. This isn't the VDS that the MOSFET's always going to have. This is going to be the maximum VDS that it can get before you damage the MOSFET. So if I were to come in here and grab a MOSFET like this one here, it has a maximum of 12 volts, which means that if I try and put 90 volts across there, I'm basically just going to destroy my MOSFET. So in our case, we are using a 90 volt supply. So I need this to be at least 90 volts. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab a 100 volt supply. Well, if this is 100 volts, then we also have to worry about current. Can it handle the 10 amps that we want? So if I look at this one here, and let's just grab this and go look at this MOSFET. Okay, so here's my MOSFET right here. Let's look at the data sheet. Okay, so this one says here are the features. This is 100 volts, that's great. Oh, but it's only 0.17 amps. So here's my little MOSFET. I put 10 amps through this and it's just going to die. So that one isn't going to work. And so we're going to have to come and grab a different one. So if I look right here, we also have the R on. And so the R on is not directly related to, but typically the bigger the MOSFET is, the smaller the R on is. And this is the minimum resistance that you can get when the transistor's in triode. We're going to use it in active, so it doesn't really matter. But typically, if these are smaller values, they tend to be able to handle higher currents. So let's look at this one here. Okay, so let's go look up the data sheet for this one. Okay, so let's grab this data sheet. Here's the data sheet as that pulls up. Okay, so then you see this one can take 100 volts, but it can also take 50 amps. And so that's plenty for what we're doing. You can kind of see what it all looks like. You can see here the maximum value. So here's the maximum of 100 volts, maximum VGS of 20, maximum current of like either 30 or 50 amps. So this one should work great. So now we're going to come back here. Okay, so now here is our motor and here is our transistor. So we're going to wire all of this up, and then we're giving it a power supply of this. And then we're going to create a control voltage using my MOSFET. So here is my control voltage. And you see I can plug this in and look at this. So right now we're just going to ramp up and see what this looks like. So between 0 and 5 volts. And so we're basically creating a triangle wave. So here is my triangle wave going up. This is node 03, and then I look at the current. So you see here's the current going up all the way up to a really high current. So you can kind of see here is my threshold voltage. So let's just put this in as V of N003. So you can kind of see here's my threshold voltage right here. And then at this point, we go into triode. So this is my active regime right here, where I'm basically controlling the voltage. So let's say I wanted my 10 amps. So let's zoom in here. So I want 10 amps. So here's my 10 amps. So I want 2.79 volts. So if I make this 2.79 volts and run that, you see I'm getting a current of about 10 amps. Well, how does it do that? Well, what happens if I look right here is the transistor is adjusting the voltage. So now this point right here is like 84 volts. So I'm only getting like 6 volts across my motor. So the MOSFET is adjusting the voltage to control the current because it's a current controlled device. So it's going to have whatever voltage it needs in order to maintain the current. Okay, so now when I look at this, I don't have a microcontroller that puts out 2.79 volts. My microcontroller puts out 5. So if my microcontroller puts out 5, how do I get the 2.79 volts? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use resistors. So I'm going to make a voltage divider. Let's move this up so it doesn't get in the way. Okay, so now I have this voltage divider, and then I'm just going to control it with this. Now, this could just be a potentiometer. So if I have a potentiometer, I control the potentiometer. I'm controlling the current, and so I can get more or less torque out of my motor just by using my potentiometer. So let's just make this a kiloohm. We're going to sweep this one. Sweeping the resistor between 1 ohm and a K. And 1 ohm resistances. Okay, so then we're just going to sweep this. Let's try this again. So we're going to sweep this, and we're looking at the current. Apparently I have too many steps because I'm doing 1,000 steps, so eventually it'll get there. So I look at the current, and you can kind of see that the current comes down, and I wanted 10 amps. So here is my 10 amps, which is about 794 ohms to get that. Okay, we could also look at the voltage, and you can kind of see, like I said, it is that the transistor is adjusting the voltage to get the current that it wants. So if I come in here and make this 794, let's get rid of this step parameter and run this. Okay, so then what we see here is my current is 10.07 amps, and it does that by adjusting this voltage. So you see it adjusted this voltage to 84 volts to get it to work out. And so then I have my motor. So here's my motor, and I'm controlling it with this microcontroller. So I can turn it on and off. I can use a potentiometer to kind of control that the voltage there, and I can control the current, and everything works out. And this is how we kind of control a source using a MOSFET to control the current. Now this could be a motor, it could be a light, it could be an LED, all sorts of things, but we're using the MOSFET to actually